first-degree murder of his own unborn child. Thank you.
Ms. Minton, your closing argument?
Thank you, Judge.
You're welcome.
All right, as we discussed in openings and the judge told you yesterday, reasonable doubt can come from the evidence, lack of evidence, and conflicts in the evidence. So let's talk about the evidence that we heard over the last 4 days and why you should have very real doubts about the state's case. This is not a first-degree murder case. Nothing about this case is first-degree murder. In jury selection, you learned that only first-degree murders are eligible for the death penalty. This isn't that. If you believe that Jose did this, it clearly was not planned. And if you believe that bought and paid for translation, and we'll get to that in a second, of that garbled mess of inaudibles, this was a conversation instigated by Eric, who oddly seemed to have done this type of thing before. It was machismo that the state wants to call premeditation. Think about it, the location of the body on Jose's own garbage route, the route only goes to 5 streets. That's where he's going to pre-plan his, premeditated murder to put the body on his own route. The state just told you there was multiple murder weapons. That's their allegation. So somebody who pre-plans out a murder days in advance, we can't even figure out which weapon to use? If you believe that Jose did this, it was in a pressure cooker and maximum force was applied to him. You don't mess with people's money and you don't mess with their family. And if you believe the state's case, Tania was threatening Jose with both. And she was telling multiple men that they were the father of her unborn child, and she was extorting them. It's possible that Jose thought that he could talk Tania out of blackmailing him and extorting him, only to have Tania refuse, and in a fit of passion, without any ability to reflect. That's how the murder occurs. That's why the method is frantic and there are multiple weapons used. But that's only if you believe that Jose did this. But here's why you shouldn't believe that. The state told you in the opening that Jose didn't plan on being recorded. That's what they said. But not only can you see the cameras, and remember, Adolfo Cavelli told us there's 4 cameras. There's 4 different angles being recorded live. He told you that yesterday, Adolfo told you that employees are specifically instructed when they work for Waste Pro that they're being video and audio recorded. So the state's opening that he didn't plan on being recorded is false. Adolfo told you they know. We tell every employee, you're video and audio recorded at all times in the truck. Why would a person actually discuss a murder they actually meant to do in front of a camera that was constantly monitored? And Adolfo Cavelli told you the first time that he got up, look, I look at it at least once a day. At least once a day, I monitor those cameras to make sure that my drivers aren't eating and driving, that they're not texting and driving, that they're not driving in unsafe conditions. And when at the Detectives Bureau, Jose immediately gives consent to search his truck. Why? If we're to believe Rose Rosario and Norma Campos, he actually did this murder. So let's talk a little bit about Rose Rosario and Norma Campos. The state said in their first closing argument, you have no reason to not believe them. Well, let's talk about that. Rose certified the wrong date of the tape on the formal certification, not once, but twice. The date of the recording, a thing that does not need to be translated. She could not get that right, not one time, but 2 times. She got it wrong. She also told you she makes $95 an hour. And she took about 150 hours. That was the number, 150 hours to do that. That's $14,250. 14,250 reasons to say whatever the state wants her to say. And don't you think that it was odd that neither translator could simultaneously translate the audio that was being played live? Both of the translators Rose and Norma were reading the transcript that they had previously prepared. They could not translate the audio that sounded like, and I'm so happy that the state played it for you, because it sounded like this. And from that, they typed out long paragraphs. When I could only hear static and a couple words. I never heard the word Clorox. Clorox, why is that important? Why do you mention that? Well, I mention that because Clorox is a word that doesn't translate. It's a name brand. And in name brands, they're the same. Thank you. I'll restart. Meanwhile, the court interpreter, remember Rosario that came in, and the judge told you she was a neutral party, not hired by either side. She could contemporaneously, at the same time, translate English to Spanish and Spanish to English, but she wasn't getting paid $14,250 to testify. Rosario told you that she normally testifies for the state, and this was only her 7th time testifying in court. Also, why did it take Rosario 150 hours to translate one day, but Norma Campos was able to do 4 days in 55 hours? Norma also told you she didn't follow FBI protocol and do a double layer review, which is an internal validity test that the FBI requires. Now, she told you that viewing that other draft transcript, do you remember that when I asked her about that other draft transcript from the other translator at the FBI? She told you, no, I didn't want to review that. It would take too long. In a capital murder case where the state is seeking the ultimate penalty of death, imagine that. She spent 55 hours on a translation but couldn't take the time to make sure she did it correctly by checking the other translator's work. And she wouldn't answer my straightforward questions about whether she ever even read that draft or not. Remember, she said I reviewed it. Okay, well, you read it? No, I didn't read it. Well, how do you review it? It's writing. So you read it? And she couldn't even answer a question. Did you read a document? It's not a trick question. She also told you that it was the most difficult item she had ever translated, and you could not hear some of one speaker. And remember, she wouldn't answer me that either. She told the state, yeah, they're the closer speaker, right? The closer speaker, I couldn't hear some of what that person was saying. But the farther away speaker, I couldn't hear a lot of what that person was saying. And when I asked her, oh, so you couldn't hear some of what the closer speaker was saying? She said, no, I didn't say that. Well, you heard it all? No, I didn't hear all of it. Well, then you couldn't hear some of it. And then we finally got back to the place that she started with the state, that she couldn't hear some of the closer speaker, and she couldn't hear a large portion of the farther away speaker. And then she incredulously testified that missing some of one speaker and a large portion of the other speaker in all of those inaudibles didn't somehow lose any context of those conversations. We're to believe that. Remember, a lot of those conversations were in English, and they still couldn't hear them or translate them, hence all the inaudibles. But we're supposed to put all our faith in Norma, who has now testified in court a sum total of 2 times, including this case. I would submit to you that the 2 most critical state witnesses that they presented to you were the least experienced, the most combative and deceptive, the most fanciful, and the ones paid the most to tell y'all what the state wanted them to. I didn't hear those words that they typed. They didn't even know where to stop the tape when the state was playing them the tape live and they were going over the transcript. If you listened, they weren't even stopping it in the right part because you couldn't even hear the words that they allege they could hear. They just want you to take their word for it. On the most critical piece of evidence, in the most serious type of criminal case, just believe them. Just take their word for it. And they also kept talking about being familiar with the Puerto Rican dialect, but Jose told Newman he grew up in Connecticut. Don't swallow their testimony whole. We talked about this in jury selection. Remember, I told you to assume a witness was lying until they prove to you otherwise. But at the very least, be neutral until they prove to you and convinced you that they were truth tellers, such that you should put your trust in them. And neither of those witnesses met that bar. They want you to trust them on something you can neither see nor hear. They simply do not deserve that level of trust. And frankly, the FBI believes so too, because Norma had only testified in one previous case. Y'all have been in court more than Norma's been in court. In the most difficult translation, the government chose Norma, who has only testified one previous time in her entire career. And isn't it weird that the government didn't give Norma all the tapes, but gave the day after the murder, August 24th, 2018, to Rose Rosario? And you have to ask yourself, why would the government farm out the most critical and crucial tape to a private company who gets paid by the hour rather than the Federal Bureau of Investigations? Even the most inexperienced and lazy FBI agent. No, they sent it to a private company to a lady who gets paid $95 per hour. You get what you pay for, and they paid a pretty penny for that testimony. And the court told you yesterday how you weigh evidence, and they gave you some rules about it. And one of the rules was the witness honest and straightforward in answering the attorney's questions? I would submit that neither Norma nor Rose were. Did they have some interest in how the case should be decided? Sure they did. If Rose doesn't say what the state wants her to say, do you think the state's going to hire her again? Do you think she's going to make $14,250 again if she doesn't do a good job for them? Does the witness's testimony agree with other testimony or other evidence? I talked to Norma about that other draft transcript and the discrepancies, even in the first line, because we couldn't get her to agree that she had actually read it, so we couldn't go line by line. But even in the first line that I was able to go over with her, look, the first line on the first page. Norma, you had to have reviewed that, right? The first line on the first page. I realized 40 pages and, a 45-minute review is just too long in a capital murder case for you. But you had to have read at least the first line of the first page. And we went over the difference in drafts. And they were different. The judge also told you, did the witness receive any money? They did. So let's get back to the case. So this guy, who allegedly meticulously plans a murder, gets blood everywhere and hasn't had time to clean out his truck. He immediately gives consent to search his truck. He tells him, yeah, you can search my truck, you can search my phone, you can have my DNA, because he knows he didn't murder Tania. And what he later learns is their unborn child. But he knows who did. His wife, Deborah Soto-Escalera. Hiller told you that the sheriff retained the truck from 8/25/18 to the time they executed the search on 9/24/18. But Donna Carmichael, her supervisor, if you'll remember, told you that they gave the truck back to Jose on 9/10/2018, and they didn't get it back, or they gave the truck back on 9/10, and they didn't get it back till 9/21/2018. If Jose did this and he knew he got blood on the carpet, why didn't he cut the carpet out while he had the truck back? Did Deborah have time to tamper with the truck? The state talked about their medical examiner. I would submit that testimony was what it was, with one exception. The medical examiner did not get the gestational age of the unborn child right. Remember, she told you it was 38 and a half weeks, but Dr. Stossel came in and testified, no, the gestational age was 32 weeks. That was in his records that Dr. O'Neill said that she had reviewed. She just missed that part. Why do I bring that up? I bring that up because this is the government's case. They're asking you to believe all these people that get on the stand, raise their right hand, swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And they've been wrong. They've been repeatedly wrong. Is it a lie? Is it a misleading? Is it a mistake? I don't know. But they're wrong, and they're asking you to trust them. Also, why would Jose have waited 32 weeks to get rid of this problem if it really was a problem for him? If he didn't want his child and he wanted to kill Tania after she didn't have an abortion, that would have been obvious way sooner than at 32 weeks. Why wait months? Because he didn't do it. When I told you in my opening statement that Tania came into contact with many unsavory characters, make no mistake, I was not denigrating Tania or her profession, but it doesn't make her profession any less dangerous. And one of those unsavory characters that she came into contact with was my client. He was a married man, and he was cheating on his wife, Deborah, with a much younger woman. And what do we know about Deborah? You didn't hear much evidence about her. We know she had some hand in getting Kenneth Barron fired, right? He told you that. So he has some kind of axe to grind. And where are all these conversations talking about Kenneth Barron? Where are all these conversations about having a ghost gun and wanting to purchase a ghost gun in this place that has cameras everywhere? Where are all these conversations? And where does, frankly, Jose even have the time to talk with Kenneth Barron? When does that interaction occur? That was never explained. So we're to believe that Jose asked a guy named Kenneth Barron, who his wife Deborah had a hand in getting fired, a guy he's not even really good friends with, for a ghost gun. And the upstanding citizen that Kenneth Barron is didn't go immediately to the police and say, hey, I'm a lawful gun owner. This guy's asking me for a ghost gun. It must be for something bad. Y'all better look into that. No, you didn't hear any evidence of that. And you know why? That conversation never happened. But even if you assume that it did, what did Kenneth Barron tell you that Jose told him? That the ghost gun was for his nephew. Who's his nephew? Eric Alvarado. Also, why would Jose even need an untraceable gun if you believe Norma and Rose and their fanciful translations? He has a shotgun. I don't know how you trace buckshot. Why would he need an untraceable gun if he has a shotgun? We know Deborah was a supervisor at Waste Pro, so she had access to those video and audios at Waste Pro from the truck. Wouldn't Deborah have questioned why Tania was still hanging around the Soto-Escalera family after she had allegedly broken up with Bradley Rodriguez Jr., which was the way that they knew Tania, through Bradley Rodriguez Jr.? Remember, Jose told Newman that weekend, in fact, Tania was supposed to bring her son over to hang out and stay the weekend with Jose, with their child. You don't think Deborah thought that was suspicious and took a peek at those Waste Pro videos? She knows that the truck recorded Jose and Eric talking about something with the girl, so she knows all signs would point to them. And you know whose DNA they never got an exemplar of? Remember, we talked about all those exemplars? We got one from Mark Berg, we got one from Bradley Rodriguez Jr., we got one from Giovanni Alvarado, we got one from Jared Christie, the guy they call Casino, we got one from Jose. Never got one from Deborah. You didn't hear any evidence of an exemplar from her, but DNA International did tell you, remember, about that 4-person mixture on the passenger headrest. And Mr. Houseman told you it was Tania, at least one other male, and 2 other persons on the passenger headrest. But the only exemplar that we gave DNA International was Tania's. We didn't even check to see if Deborah was in that mixture. What if Deborah, having heard Jose's plan to meet up with Tania, followed him that night after he went out, and she killed her? Or what if Deborah was the one driving the truck, right? The state just made all this evidence. Look, there's a truck. There's the truck. Who's in the truck? What evidence did we hear about who's driving the truck? Did anyone identify the driver of the truck? No. Deborah knew Tania. She could have taken Jose's phone and lured her out to talk. Then hit her in the head and did a close-up killing, a deeply personal type of killing, not like this gun shooting that Rose and Norma told you Jose and Eric were talking about. No, 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 no. This was a knifing to the throat. And Tania was only in that ditch because Deborah couldn't lift her body that far. And those hairs everywhere, remember? The hairs all over the place on the shoe in the back of the truck? That could be Deborah's hair. But we don't know because we never got a DNA standard from Deborah. And we never sent it to DNA International to be tested. Then Deborah litters the scene with all the beer cans and a condom wrapper. So we're supposed to believe this dude, right, who masterminds a pre-planned murder on video and audio, is somehow able to commit a murder where there's blood everywhere, right? If you believe the state, there's blood everywhere. And he's able to leave no DNA on the scene, not on the beer cans, not on the condom wrapper, not on the body, even with gloves, right? If you're lifting a body and putting it somewhere, there's going to be DNA left on the body. We certainly couldn't have tested it against Deb's DNA because we didn't get a standard of that. And look, Mark Chapman told you that those tire tracks were not from Jose's truck. Was that because it was Deborah's car? Did we check Deborah's car tires? For that matter, did we check the car tires, or did you hear any evidence of checking Mark Burke's car's tires? Jared Christie's car tires? Giovanni Alvarado's car tires? Bradley Rodriguez Jr.'s car tires? Eric Alvarado's car tires? No. We just checked Jose's and then we were done. It didn't match, not even the same type of class. Remember? It wasn't even the same type of tire. But that was it. That was enough for us. The only DNA of Tania's linking her to the truck was on the driver's side carpet found after the truck had been placed back in the custody of my client for over a week. DNA International William Houseman told you that DNA could be found even 20 years later in cold cases. Now, you heard Newman in the interview with my client say, well, DNA degrades, you wouldn't find it. He's not an expert. That was a lie. William Houseman from DNA International told you could get DNA on cold cases from over 20 years ago. So let's talk about this truck, right? The state showed you the video of the truck and they said, oh, the fog lights match. This matches. It's the truck. There's the video from Cactus. It comes out of the house. Where's the rest of the video? Does Deb's car follow behind? We didn't see any evidence of that. We didn't see what else was on the video. Deborah could have stepped in blood and gotten it in the truck, or that DNA could just be from sex contact that Jose had with Tania in his truck because we know they had sex. Let's talk about those phone records. You didn't hear any evidence of the GPS of Deborah's cell phone that night. But Jose did curiously tell Newman, yeah, I'm not really tech savvy. I don't like do Facebook on my phone a lot. Deborah does that for me. She gets on my phone and she does Facebook. Did she take his phone? Because we know she uses it because he told Newman she does. And make a call from it to frame him? Where are her phone records and locations? We don't have those. Remember, Dee Petrie-Antonio told you that she could only, and this was important, she could only tell you where the phone was. She could not tell you who had the phone. The state wants you to make that mental leap. Do not. Do not. Jose would have known what Deb did at the time of his interview. And he would have known that it was ultimately his fault, and he lied. There's no two ways about it. He lied. He lied to Newman to protect his infidelity and to protect his wife. But he wasn't scared to talk. He immediately talks to Newman because he didn't do it. He repeatedly says that. And if you do believe Norma and Rose, he says that repeatedly in the tapes too. I didn't do it. I didn't do nothing. Also, curiously, in the interview with Newman, Jose says, my wife is freaking out. Well, why would Deborah be freaking out, right? At this point in time, she doesn't know about, allegedly, the murder of Tania Wise. She doesn't even know that Tania Wise is the mother of Jose's baby. She doesn't know about the affair. Why would she be freaking out? Deborah knew Jose or Eric would be the only suspect because she made it so. But don't think that I forgot about Eric. So let's talk about Eric. On the alleged translation, Jose says in the beginning that Tania was sleeping with Eric. And remember, Eric's DNA, Wayne Walker told you, State didn't mention this, but Eric's DNA was on the passenger door, the rear passenger door of the Dodge Ram. But Eric Alvarado's exemplar was never sent to DNA International to determine if he was that at least one male contributor to the four-way mixture on the headrest of the passenger seat. No. We didn't do that. And the state also didn't send DNA International the inconclusive mixture from the driver armrest top or the bottom of the driver armrest from the Dodge Ram. Would those have provided a match to Eric? We'll never know because we didn't even try. As soon as Jose was determined to be the father of that child in this case, the case was closed. The investigation done. Despite the fact that so many other people had the means, the motive, the intent, the opportunity, all of those things. So Eric's in this Waste Pro truck with Jose, allegedly talking about this murder, both before and after it happens. So let's talk about what Eric actually says, if you believe Norma and Rose. You can, at least the part that we heard, clearly hear at least some talking over each other, and it's not clear what they're saying or who is speaking, but let's talk about the quotes attributed by the government to good old Eric. And you don't have to trust me about this. You can ask for that play acting testimony to be played back again, so you can see which speaker was saying which part. Don't take my word for it. On set 3 of 39, on August 21st of 2018, Eric allegedly says, that girl is talking shit. How would he know? Why would he care about a girl talking shit? What is he even talking about? If we're to believe the state's case, Eric has no knowledge of any of this. How would he know that this person he doesn't even know, Tania Wise, is saying anything? Jose, again, as attributed by the state's witnesses, then allegedly asks Eric, how did you do it? At night? And Eric says, yes. She said, and that was it. So Eric is killed before? Okay, good to know. Eric then allegedly calls the girl a damn bitch. Again, why? What girl? Who's he talking about? Why is he calling her names if he doesn't even know her? Eric then says he'll take something to Miami. What? If Eric's not involved in this, what's he taking to Miami? On set 8 of 39, on 8/23, Eric allegedly said, we need something like that, something with a barrel. Wow, okay, so Eric's talking about we need a gun. Why is Eric talking about needing a gun? Eric says, that's what I'm going to do. What's Eric going to do? Eric had nothing to do with this, right? If you believe the government, it was Jose and all Jose. What is Eric going to do? Eric, who's murdered before, apparently. On set 12 of 39, again on 8/23/18, Eric allegedly says, I'll probably go to jail. What's Eric going to go to jail for if Eric didn't do anything? On set 23 of 39 on 8/23, Jose allegedly says, like, clean it real good to take off all the fingerprints, all of them. Unintelligible, this bitch. Unintelligible. If you got to use it, then you use it. Odd. If Jose's the one that does it, why is he telling Eric how to do it and what to use? If Jose's planning to do it, he would say, if I got to use it, I'm going to use it. Not, if you got to use it, then you use it. Who's you? Use Eric. Eric responds, I don't know what you're talking about. And Jose allegedly responds, exactly. Sounding like a guy who's done it before. On 8/24/2018, Eric allegedly said, this is the morning after the murder, mind you. Eric allegedly said, can't stop thinking about that. What's Eric thinking about? He wasn't even there, right? He doesn't know anything about it. What's he thinking about? Things that are running in my head. What things? That I should have, that I would have, shoulda, woulda, what? On the morning after a murder that he was on tape planning a murder of something similar that he's done before? Should have, would have, what? That's their evidence. Those are their experts that say that say Eric said, can't stop thinking about that. Things that are running in my head that I should have, I would have. Then, interestingly, same day, Eric allegedly says, as soon as I walk in, she looks at me and she says, unintelligible, somebody else. Who is she? Who is she? Where did he walk into? With the female thinking it was going to be somebody else. That's curious. On 8/24/2018, Eric also allegedly said, I had it here, right here, this part here. You put in the output in this little thing, you put it, I put it right there and it all stays. What's he talking about? That's Eric. I'm not saying it's Eric. They told you it was Eric. Their witness told you it was Eric. What's he talking about? Later on 8/24, Eric allegedly says, I'm fucked. And because I have to be calm like that, now everything to them, it's fine. To which Jose, again, these are the government's witnesses' attributions, not mine. Jose allegedly says, did she have a purse? Curious. If Jose was there and he's the one that did the murder. Or, let's assume he participated with Eric. He would know if she had a purse or not. He was there, right? He wouldn't need to ask Eric, did she have a purse? No. He wasn't there. It was Eric. Why is Eric, if Eric didn't have anything to do with this, doesn't know nothing about nothing, why is Eric on the morning after a murder fucked? Why does he say that? Someone says, I already took 2 baths when I got to her house. Whose house? No one took baths at Tania's house. Tania's mom testified. She never told you a gentleman came into my house and took baths. If the state believes that that's Jose, which I submit, I guess that's what they're saying, that it's Jose that says I already took 2 baths when I got to her house. Whose house? That's not what he would refer to his house. He would say my house. We know it's not Tania's house because her mom didn't say, oh, a guy came in and took baths and it was weird. And we know Jose didn't go to another house, right? If you believe the state's witness about the cell phone, that witness didn't put him in another house. No, that's because that was Eric. Eric said that. There's no evidence at Jose's house when they conduct the search of Jose's house. Look, remember, they have all these fancy tools, right? They have all these things. They have that thing called Blue Star, right? They have Star Mix. They have all of these different things that can recover DNA. It lights up bright. Remember, they told you that. And this criminal mastermind is supposed to have gotten rid of every scintilla of evidence in his house. No. It's because he didn't do it. Eric did it. And the evidence is that whoever her's house is, but we don't know who her is because we don't get Eric Alvarado's phone records and we don't do a GPS location on his phone. So we don't know who her is, but we should have gone to her's house and tested there. That's probably where the bag is. You know, the bag, the missing bag. The state said, I wish we had found the bag. That's probably where the bag is. And in the bag would have been Eric's clothes covered in blood and Tania's DNA. On 8/24/2018, Jose allegedly asked Eric, did you make it? Did you make the landfill? Inaudible, everything. And Eric responds, I hope so. Why does Eric need to go to the landfill on the day after the murder? Why is he hoping so? What's he got? Is it the bag? Is it the bag with his clothes in them? Was it Eric that took Jose's phone to lure Tania out? And that's why there's a phone call back and forth? His nephew that he grew up with that sounds like him? And is that why when Eric says I walked into her house and she didn't know it was me, she wasn't expecting me? Because she thought she was meeting Jose and it was Eric, and Eric convinces her to come out, and Eric is driving Jose's truck? Because he says, she looks at him and thinks he's someone else because she was expecting it to be Jose and not Eric. Does Eric's car have a Puerto Rican tag on the front? What even car does he drive? We don't know. There was no evidence of that. Or did he just use Jose's truck and remove the car tag like he talked about on that recording? That was Eric. On 8/25/2018, Eric allegedly says they're going to have questions. And Jose allegedly tells him, you're going to take my truck to my house. So we know Eric drives Jose's truck. We don't know what his car looks like. We don't know where Eric was that night, or what his phone number was, or where his phone was. But we do know his DNA was on the truck. And Eric believed he was fucked the morning after the murder. You should have doubts about the government's case. Those doubts are eminently reasonable. And you should find Jose not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Minton. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as I mentioned, the state has the opportunity to make a rebuttal argument. So the arguments are not closed. I have not submitted the case to you for deliberations. I want to highlight that because we're going to take a bathroom break for 10 minutes. Leave your notes in your chairs. Do not discuss the case at this time. Please be clear about that. When you come back, we'll conclude with the arguments.